Good morning. This is the Energy and Carbon Management Commission for the state of Colorado, Wednesday, March 11th, and this is our general meeting. We start with roll call.
Thank you, Commissioner Ackerman,
Here.
Commissioner Cross,
Present.
Commissioner Mesner,
Here.
Commissioner Oath,
Here.
Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 5 commissioners present.
Very good. We start with commissioner comments. Any commissioners with comments for the good of the cause? Commissioner Oath.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to share that last night I attended the kickoff meeting for the Community Relations Unit's community meeting series. Was pleased to attend that. There were a good number of folks who were attending. Anyone who may not have been able to make it but is interested, I know the meeting was recorded and will be made available. And in this meeting, the Community Relations Unit and Director Murphy attended and provided kind of an overview of ECMC, kind of what we do, and walked through a number of resources that we have available, and spent a good amount of time in Q&A. So it was a good meeting, and that there are plans to have one a month in April. It will be focused on our permitting process, in May on inspections and incident reports, and in June, a presentation on the cumulative impacts report from 2025. So just wanted to share that and also say kudos to the crew team. Thanks.
Thank you. Others with comments? Seeing none, we move to consent. Does anyone have questions with regard to the consent agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve consent?
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. We now have a update. We've been doing these every so often from our different units. Today is the ECMC Environmental Unit Update, Annual Report to Water Quality Control. Killian Collins.
I want to go ahead and introduce Killian to you, to the panel. Chair Robbins.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good morning, commissioners. For the record, I am Kyle Wagner, the Eastern Environmental Supervisor for the ECMC. I bring 27 years of experience in oil and gas remediation and reclamation to the agency, backed by degrees in environmental science and chemistry, as well as my license as a professional geologist. I've been with the ECMC for now over 3 years, and today I'm pleased to introduce Killian Collins from our Eastern team, who will provide the environmental unit update. Killian, the floor is yours.
Cool. Thanks, Kyle. As Kyle mentioned, my name is Killian Collins. I am a Northeast area EPS. I've got about 10 years of oil gas experience. Went to school at formerly Mesa State University, or Mesa State College, now Colorado Mesa University. And I will be presenting our 2025 environmental unit update. So kick things off with just a refresher of what the environmental unit functions are in general. So we oversee spill and release cleanup plans and regulate site investigation and remedial site plans via Form 19s and 27s. A big part of that workload is driven by the decommissioning portfolios of our operators within the state. Additionally, we respond to complaints regarding all allegations of impacts from oil and gas activity. We conduct inspections to provide field oversight to operator activities and ensure oil and gas facilities are complying with our 900 and 1000 series rules, as well as support other ECMC units by consulting on permitting, waste management, stormwater management, and topsoil management. Quick overview of what the presentation will encapsulate. We've got some environmental unit statistics for y'all, as well as some updates from our teams, and then time slot for some questions. So going into our unit statistics. Before diving fully into the statistics, I think it's good to provide a little bit of context on where the majority of our work takes place within the state. This here is a heat map showing where all the active wells are within the state of Colorado. And as you can kind of tell from this map, over 59% of our active wells are within Weld County and Garfield County. As I kind of mentioned in that brief overview, a big driver of the environmental work is from operators plugging and abandoning aging and low producing wells. Uh, so overall, our total active well count has been declining since 2021, and that's represented by the green line at the top of the graph there. And you'll also notice that there's been a drop in plugging and abandoning or P&A operations in 2025, but the majority of that is still taking place within Weld County. That's represented by our blue and orange bars there on the graph. The orange bar is the total for the state of wells plugged and abandoned. That includes Weld and Garfield counties. And the blue bar there is just the wells that were plugged within Weld County. So that decrease we saw in 2025 is likely due to the large number of wells that we've had P&A'd in previous years, which has led to a lower inventory of inactive and lower producing wells. A total of approximately 1,400 wells were P&A'd statewide in 2025, with about 1,300 of those being in Weld County. That brought our total well count down to 45,375. As I mentioned previously, this directly influences the environmental unit as is the primary driver of our workload is the facility decommissioning. And speaking of facility decommissioning, that's also a driver for a lot of our spill statistics. So as you can see on this graph here, I've got our spills that impact or threaten to impact groundwater, recent releases, historical releases, closed remediations, and new remediations. I'm sure you're all aware, but it bears reiterating that after the rule change from Senate Bill 19-181 that took effect in January 15th of 2021, a significant increase in new remediation projects was observed, and a significant portion of the spills reported are a result of those new spill requirements. Our rules require operators to submit site investigation and remedial work plans, Form 27s, before decommissioning any oil and gas facility, including wellheads, flow lines, tank batteries, in addition to the previous requirements for production pits, partially buried vaults or tanks. And now operators must demonstrate that all sites comply with our Table 915-1 before they're granted closure. So that means that for every site, they have to submit a work plan and remedial plan and collect soil samples, which has led to a drastic increase in the discovery of historical releases. So for historical and recent releases, operators are required to immediately stop any ongoing release, investigate the extent of the contamination, remove the source of the contamination, establish points of compliance, remediate to the extent practicable, and monitor or remediate contaminant levels until they comply with our Table 915-1 standards and Regulation 41 groundwater quality standards. So how does that impact our workload? In 2025, there were 2,323 spills and releases reported statewide, with 337 being releases from an active facility and 1,986 being historical releases discovered during facility decommissioning. Of all those spills, only 60 were releases that were impacting or threatening to impact groundwater. And this led to the creation of 2,704 new remediation projects statewide, as well as we were able to close 711 of those remediation projects. Diving a little bit more into the statistics, this is a representation of the forms that we currently have in process. We have a total of 5,225 forms in process, with 178 of those being initial Form 27s and 5,047 being supplemental Form 27s. So what this means is our initial forms are the forms that create a remediation project. So in 2025, 178, or from 2025, we have 178 new projects still in queue waiting for review to start work. And then we have 5,000 forms that are updates of the work that is ongoing. So that 5,000 number can look a little bit daunting, but those are updates to already existing sites. So it's not 5,000 new sites there. Those are 5,000 updates to ongoing remedial projects. Our spill form statistics, we currently have 370 open spills in the state and a total of 2,438 Form 19s in process. The Form 19s are a little bit different than the Form 27s. Form 27s are kind of cut and dry. You've got an initial and a supplemental. With the Form 19s, we've got a Form 19 initial and a Form 19 supplemental. But in addition to that, we've also got a Form 19 initial supplemental, which makes it a little bit more difficult to break it out and and showcase each form individually. The reason for that is operators have the ability to submit a Form 19 initial indicating that a spill or release has occurred, and also to provide supplemental data on that if they were able to collect data or anything like that at the time of the spill to give us a more robust update. So what is the spill and remediation cycle here? So pursuant to Rule 912, operators are required to notify the Commission within 24 hours of discovering a spill or release, whether it be a recent release or a historical release. And they have to submit a Form 19 initial or initial supplemental within 72 hours of that discovery. Operators must then submit a Form 19 supplemental report within 90 days of that discovery date, either requesting closure of the spill by providing adequate documentation and data showing that the release was fully remediated and complies with Table 915-1, or if they were unable to fully remediate that release within 90 days, they must submit a Form 27 initial creating a remediation project for the release to be closed to. A little bit of a caveat to that is because of that rule change where decommissioning work requires a Form 27 initial up front, operators can close those historical spills onto the existing remediation started for the decommissioning work. Probably one of the most crucial parts of our job in the environmental department is ensuring data integrity, making sure that operators are doing the best to clean up their sites. So I wanted to highlight that here. A big part of that data integrity confirmation is our environmental group. This last year has worked closely with local laboratories to develop a process of delivering locked or secured lab reports to operators and consultants. This prevents any potential tampering of the data. So we're 100% certain that we are getting accurate and true data for each site. In addition to that, my fellow EPSs and I dedicate some time to thoroughly review each submittal by cross-referencing historical site data, using various COGIS database tools, including our GIS map, and the new one that's coming out this year is pretty exciting, and ensure that the operators are complying with our rules. Once we get through all the remediation, we declare that there's no further action necessary. They've complied with our rules and meet all of our standards. Sites will get passed off to our reclamation team. And in 2025, our reclamation team completed approximately 6,500 final and interim reclamation inspections. 4,450 of those inspections were final inspections, and about 1,500 were interim reclamation inspections. Something to note here to emphasize that I'll get into a little bit more later is that 550 of those final inspections were completed via drone. And those drone inspections are completed by both ECMC staff and the operators. Moving into our unit updates here. The ECMC environmental staff is up to 36 full-time employees. We've got over 30 bachelor degrees, 13 master's degrees, 2 advanced degrees, and over 200 years of oil and gas experience within our unit. Got another little unit function there to reiterate. Just really want to hammer that one home, what we do here. But something of note to add is that the reclamation team had brought on 3 new FTEs last year, bringing them up to fully staffed, which is very exciting for them and good for everyone involved. Moving on to some of the other updates that are impactful over the environmental unit, we've got the House Bill 23-1242. So in April 25, the ECMC enacted the new produced water rules and the statement of basis and purpose. The purpose of this rulemaking is to increase the use of recycled produced water in oil and gas operations. We've got, I accidentally put the wrong, oh no, I didn't. Sorry, I got distracted there, looking at my next slide. So this is a thing that our environmental data group has worked heavily in, and I'll touch on this a little bit later when I get into the specific environmental data group updates. Another big accomplishment of our unit last year was the methane seepage study in the Raton Basin. So in 2025, in alliance with the Water Quality Control Division, the Department of Public Health and Environment, and the local governments, the ECMC completed our methane seepage study in the Raton Basin. The study was divided into 2 sections: the methane seepage assessment and the coal bed methane produced water study, or CBM produced water study. For the CBM portion of the study, produced water samples were collected in October and November of 2024, and the data evaluation was completed in the spring of 25. We presented that data in a final report to the Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee of the House of Representatives and the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee of the Senate on June 30th of 25. The study generally found that variability of the CBM produced water quality throughout the basin required the additional and ongoing characterization of the produced water from any individual CBM well considered for beneficial reuse. For the methane seepage portion, the ECMC evaluated several methods of mapping the methane seepages and ultimately procured a contractor to utilize aerial surveys to identify methane seepage areas, coupled with ground verification and flux measurements of the methane seeps. The aerial surveys identified 99 potential natural methane seepage areas, and 45 of those seeps were able to be accessed, and 28 demonstrated measurable methane flux. So in general, 25% of the measured seeps accounted for 88% of the total measured methane seep emissions. I've provided a link here to this study on our website where you can get some additional information regarding that. So as I promised, here's our update from the environmental data group and its correlation to the produced water stuff. So our data team is currently working on rolling out the WaterStar program, which is a replacement for the COENV database, where much of our water quality data is stored from submittals of Form 43s. So this new database is going to be a more modern database. It will still be accessible through the CODIS database, but it's going to be a much more robust system with a better user interface and ability to find the data that you're looking for. They're also, as I mentioned, implementing the new produced water rules. This involved developing new forms, including the 47 and 48. The Form 47 is for quarterly produced water reporting, and the Form 48 is for produced water credits for the operators. Additionally, they're implementing a program for operators to voluntarily recycle their produced water. Little stats for them. Our environmental data team received 3,250 Form 43s containing analytical sample data from operators last year that they had to input into the database and do their thorough review. Moving on to our reclamation team. As I mentioned, I'd get into the drone stuff here, and the highlight of our reclamation team last year is their second annual operator QA panel and drone training on the Western Slope. They hosted the first one in 2024 on the Front Range, and just last year they hosted this one on the Western Slope. It's an initiative by our reclamation group to provide a venue for operators to discuss reclamation-related topics with ECMC staff, as well as an opportunity for our staff to train operators on the submittal of drone inspections to ensure that operators are utilizing the drones in the most efficient ways to make sure that they're getting a thorough inspection that our team can use to determine reclamation status of sites. This year, they had over 60 individuals attend this Q&A panel, and they represented operators, landowners, and other stakeholders from throughout the area. Final update I have for you guys here is the Bishop A18742 loss of containment incident. I'm just going to provide a kind of a general update. I know Abdul will be presenting to you guys in the next week or so, and he'll get into some of the more the nitty-gritty and finer details of this. Just to bring it back up to your attention, this represented one of the most significant recent environmental response efforts managed by the ECMC. In early 2025, the uncontrolled release of produced water and hydrocarbons affected rural residential properties, agricultural land, and nearby surface water pathways. This prompted an expedited multi-agency response under our ECMC rules 912, 913, and 915. The incident required immediate sampling, emergency coordination with Noble or Chevron and other state partners, as well as public communication in the implementation of a comprehensive environmental sampling and analysis plan. And with that, I'll close out and open the floor to you all for questions.
Thank you very much. All right, commissioners, questions? Commissioner Ackerman?
Thank you, and I really appreciate the update here. And I know that there's been lots of behind-the-scenes work that you've just been able to kind of scratch the surface on here. And really wanted to say how much I appreciate the strides that we're making in not just the field side of detection and remediation, but also the technical side. There's a lot of work associated with many programs that you touched on. I appreciate the update on the remediation database updates, and I'm wondering if it may not be an appropriate for a commission meeting, but maybe a one-on-one commissioner opportunity to sit down with staff and really go through the database and understand kind of the changes that you're making and how I can use that system to dig in a little bit. And so that not necessarily asking for an answer to that question right now, but something that maybe we can discuss. I also wanted to express appreciation for the work that you've done on the drone program. I think this can really be helpful in earlier detection of any issues, as well as just kind of keeping a handle on things in general. And so no significant questions there, but some appreciation, and maybe we can touch base a little bit more on a deeper dive into the database. Thanks.
Definitely appreciate it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Other questions? Well, thank you very much for presenting to us and thus presenting to all of our stakeholders. It is very much appreciated.
Thank you.
All right. We'll now move into the next agenda item. It's an oil and gas development plan, docket 2504000058, QB Energy Operating. Let's take 5 minutes and get the applicants all set up, and let's return at 9:27. All right, welcome back. The Energy and Carbon Management Commission will reconvene. We are taking up docket 25040058, the QB Energy Operating LLC Oil and Gas Development Plan. We first will hear from Julie Rothy, ECMC Location Assessment Specialist. Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Julia Rothy, and I am the lead location assessment specialist for the QB Energy ELU Fed 001496 OGDP. Thank you for the opportunity to address a typo in the published director's recommendation. In the second paragraph of the Wildlife Resources section, the greater sage-grouse timing limitation was incorrectly listed. It should read, QB Energy has committed to conducting civil construction activities outside of greater sage-grouse timing limitations from March 1st through July 15th. These timing limitation dates are correctly listed in the Wildlife Management Plan and on the 2A. This correction to the director's recommendation does not change staff's recommendation for conditional approval. Thank you for the time to address this for the record, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have questions? Seeing no questions, we'll let you move on. Thank you very much for being with us and for correcting that typo.
Thank you.
Good morning, Ms. Wazelinski. Do you want to raise your witnesses for the swearing in procedure?
Yes, thank you. We've got a few witnesses here from QB, so if everyone could please turn your cameras on, we'll get you sworn in.
Assistant Attorney General Boudreau, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Chair, I'll ask each of the witnesses to be visualized. When I call your name, please raise your hand, state your first and last name, and swear to tell the truth. Tracy Falling.
My name is Tracy Falling, and I swear to tell the truth.
Tyler Blessing.
Swear to tell the truth.
Lindsay Ryder.
Lindsay Ryder, I swear to tell the truth.
Troy Brewer.
Troy Brewer, I swear to tell the truth.
Jeff Krosky.
Jeff Krosky, I swear to tell the truth.
Thank you. Did I get everyone, Ms. Wazelinski?
Yes, Miss Beersmith is screen sharing, so I don't think we need to swear her in.
Thank you.
All right.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I think we'll just get our PowerPoint up and running, and then I'll get started. There you go. Perfect. That looks great on my side. So good morning, commissioners. My name's Kelsey Wazelinski with Jost Energy Law, and with Jamie Jost, we represent QB Energy Operating LLC in the ELU Fed 001496 OGDP before you today in docket 2504000058. We would like to thank Rio Blanco County for its support of the OGDP, and also ECMC staff and the director for their efforts on this OGDP, and Ms. Rothy for her clarifications on the director recommendation. The QB team on this slide will be presenting the OGDP to you today, or available for questions at the end of the presentation. I'll take just a few minutes to summarize the ELU Fed 001496 OGDP and requested relief before I turn it over to the QB team. We will refer to the OGDP as the 001 from here on out. This OGDP requests that the Commission establish an approximate 882.66 acre OGDP for the development of 28 new directional wells targeting the Williams Fork Formation in Rio Blanco County to be developed from the new 001 pad. The proposed 001 location is located on BLM-owned surface land and will develop BLM minerals within the expanded Liberty Federal Unit. Operations at the 001 location will be conducted pursuant to the expanded Liberty Federal Unit and associated unit agreement. QB will develop the 28 proposed directional wells pursuant to Piceance Basin-wide Order Number 1-229, which established downhole well density at the equivalent of 1 well per 10 acres for the Williams Fork and Isles formations, with 100-foot setbacks along the northern and southern unit boundary and 600-foot setbacks along the eastern and western unit boundary. The proposed 001 pad is located in Rio Blanco County, which does not regulate the siting of oil and gas locations, but does require special use and building permits pursuant to the Rio Blanco County Land Use and Development Code, which QB will comply with. The proposed wells will produce to the existing ELU G13 496 location, which is location ID 479215. The proposed location is not within a disproportionately impacted community, and there are no RBUs or high occupancy building units within 1 mile of the proposed working pad surface, no school or childcare facilities within 1 mile, and the oil and gas location will not be within 1 mile of a surface water supply. The 001 is located within a few high priority habitats for the elk production area, elk winter concentration area, greater sage grouse priority habitat management area, mule deer migration corridor, and mule deer winter concentration area. After extensive consultation with CPW, QB will schedule construction of the proposed location in 2026, outside of the winter timing limitation for big game from December 1 to April 30, outside of the elk production timing limitation from May 15 to June 30, and outside of the greater sage grouse timing limitation from March 1 to July 15. QB anticipates that drilling and completions will occur year-round within these timing limitations to avoid multiple occupations. QB will describe its robust consultation with CPW and the BLM, its detailed ALA process, and the committed BMPs to protect public health, safety, welfare, the environment, and wildlife resources in the presentation. In addition, the OGDP includes a variance request to Rule 406E4 to allow QB an additional 22 months for a total of 28 months to commence drilling operations following the setting of conductors at the 001 pad, and a variance to Rule 1003B to allow QB to commence interim reclamation at the 001 pad no longer than 12 months following the completion of all pre-production activities at the 001 pad, or within 6 months from the completion of the last well, for a maximum time frame of 54 months from the commencement of construction, whichever comes first. The Director recommendation for conditional approval contains 2 COAs regarding the submittal of bonding to the ECMC and confirming the requested interim reclamation timing, which QB agrees to. And finally, QB has complied with all notice requirements for the OGDP. No formal petitions were filed and no public comments were received on the Form 2A. I'll now turn it over to Tyler Blessing with QB to continue the presentation.
Thank you, Kelsey. Proposed 001 pad will be located on federally owned surface land and will develop federal minerals within Rio Blanco County. The 001 pad will be located approximately 19 miles northwest of Parachute and approximately 21 miles southwest of Meeker. The proposed well pad will support the development of 28 directional oil and gas wells and was sited in proximity to existing QB infrastructure. Production from the wells on the 001 will be processed at the existing ELU G13-496 Central Delivery Point, also referred to as the G13 CDP. Production will be transported to the G13 CDP from the 001 via 3-phase pipeline takeaway. This facility was officially designed as a consolidated central location that will support production from several existing and proposed well pads. Due to its advanced design, no additional equipment sundries or modifications will be required for the G13 CDP to receive the production from the 001 pad. In addition, the G13 CDP is tied into QB's water recycling infrastructure for this area, which supports a best-in-class usage ratio of recycled water. This slide outlines the nearest cultural features to the 001 pad. QB has not identified any occupied structures within 1 mile of the proposed location. Furthermore, the location is greater than 1 mile from the boundary of any disproportionately impacted community. The 001 pad will be sited in a remote area of Rio Blanco County, who has not raised concerns with the proposed haul route during the permitting process. The proposed haul route will utilize Highway 13 and then County Road 5. County Road 5 will lead to Sprague Gulch Road. Once the location has been constructed, a small 44-foot-long access road will connect the 001 to Sprague Gulch Road. The 001 pad will consist of a primary well pad with a small support frac pad. During interim reclamation, the frac pad and associated access road will be fully reclaimed. As production from the wells will be transported from location via 3-phase pipelines, the location will not require a new on-site production facility. The 001 pad will use inert air systems for all pneumatic equipment to eliminate production-driven emissions. This timeline summarizes QB Energy's coordination and consultation efforts with the BLM, ECMC, CPW, and Rio Blanco County, particularly the consistent and thorough communication that occurred between QB, CPW, and BLM prior to submittal of the OGDP for this location. Key milestones include the CPW and BLM onsite at the proposed location in March of 2025, and CPW's approval of the wildlife mitigation plan in April of 2025. The 001 pad will be located in Rio Blanco County. QB will acquire an oil and gas special use building permit from Rio Blanco prior to construction of the location. The location will be constructed on federal surface lands, and the oil and gas wells will develop federal minerals. QB has coordinated closely with BLM on timing and design and anticipates submitting the federal APD request for this location shortly after this hearing. I will now hand the presentation over to Lindsay Ryder to discuss QB's wildlife strategy.
Thank you, Tyler. Hello, my name again is Lindsay Ryder, and I'm the Director of EHS for QB Energy. I'll be covering the wildlife mitigation efforts completed for the 001 location. QB Energy worked closely with BLM and CPW during site selection to avoid impacts to other critical resources as documented in the ALA. As mentioned previously, the well pad is located directly off Sprague Gulch Road, which minimizes surface disturbance by utilizing the existing route. Additionally, the pipeline will be installed along the access road, further minimizing new disturbance. Civil construction is planned to occur outside of the applicable wildlife timing limitations, which Kelsey mentioned earlier, and they're listed again on this slide. In coordination with CPW, QB Energy developed a wildlife mitigation plan and generated a compensatory mitigation fee for the project impacts. We will be remitting $70,337 for this project. Wildlife BMPs will be implemented to further minimize impacts, and a more detailed list of these best management practices will be presented in the next few minutes. In order to drill and complete the wells on the 001 pad in the most efficient and timely manner, QB Energy will be requesting a year-round timing limitation exception for drilling, completion, and flowback activities. Under the BLM Resource Management Plan amendments, timing limitation exceptions are allowed. It is important to note that construction and reclamation activities are planned to occur outside of the established timing limitations. The exceptions will be requested closer to the time of activity to allow for the evaluation of time-specific environmental conditions, such as winter severity. And CPW and BLM have historically supported single occupation plans for drilling, completions, and flowback to reduce potential indirect impacts. QB Energy evaluated development timeframes and determined that if the exception is not granted, the overall duration of activity would significantly increase. Instead of concentrating disturbance into a shorter defined period, the acute impacts would be extended over multiple years. This would delay interim reclamation by approximately 3 additional years. Without the exception, there would be 5 separate occupations instead of 1. Each rig mobilization and completion move would increase heavy truck traffic. Increased traffic and repeated disturbance could result in greater potential indirect impacts to wildlife. If the exception is granted, development would occur in 1 continuous occupation, reducing the overall duration of disturbance and allowing interim reclamation to be completed sooner. The graphic on this slide illustrates the comparison. The top tier shows timing limitations in black, which restrict development for 7.5 months, starting December 1 and running through July 15, leaving only 4.5 months for continuous development. The second tier shows activity with granted exception requests. Green depicts construction and reclamation, yellow depicts drilling, and the blue depicts completion and flowback. The development timeline would begin in July 2026 and end in the fall of 28. The third tier shows the timeline if the exception is not available or approved. Construction would begin in July 2026. Drilling and completion activities would begin in Q4 of 26 and would stretch over 5 occupations, with interim reclamation being completed in 2031. For these reasons, the variance requests are necessary in the event that BLM does not grant the timing limitation exceptions. Additional bonding in the amount of $240,026 will be applied to cover the cost of reclamation for this location. I will now turn it back over to Tyler to discuss the ALA.
Thank you, Lindsay. The 001 required an alternative location analysis due to its presence within mapped high priority habitat layers. These HPH layers are persistent throughout the region, with the entirety of the mineral development area and the adjacent boundaries within these habitats. As such, no potential alternate locations outside of HPH were identified. Furthermore, the topography of the area limits the viable terrain in which a location could be built without requiring significant amounts of soil import or removal. The proposed 001 is on a relatively flat area that can partially use an existing pipeline corridor, limiting the amount of new disturbance that would be required. Based on these findings, QB was unable to identify any alternate locations that would have less impact on potential receptors or would require less surface disturbance to develop. This slide demonstrates part of the many pre-production best management practices that QB will employ at this location. While several of these have been outlined throughout this presentation, a few worth reiterating include QB's commitment to conduct construction operations outside the HPH timing window, the anticipated use of over 75% recycled water for completions operations, and the use of water-based drilling fluid. This slide contains a list of some of the production BMPs that will be used at the 001. Most importantly, the use of the existing G13 CDP will remove the need for a new facility at this location. The production from the 001 will be transported via pipeline takeaway, and the location will be remotely monitored, reducing the need for site visits that could potentially impact wildlife in the area. I will now hand the presentation over to Kelsey for our conclusion.
Thank you, Tyler. To summarize the OGDP and request for approval, we note the following highlights. The proposed location is sited outside of all human-sensitive receptors, and QB has engaged in detailed consultation with CPW regarding proposed operations in HPH, and CPW represents that they do not have any remaining objections or outstanding issues with the current proposal as submitted in the OGDP application. The wells will produce into the existing G13 CDP production facility and will utilize existing pipeline infrastructure. QB will utilize over 75% recycled water for completions. And finally, the siting and BMPs provide protection of public health, safety, welfare of the environment, and wildlife resources by avoiding, minimizing, and mitigating adverse impacts. This last slide shows the relief requested for this OGDP. We respectfully request approval of the OGDP and associated Form 2A. This does conclude our presentation. We have a list of subject matter experts here on the hearing. So at this point, I think we can take the PowerPoint down, and our team is now open for questions.
Great. Thank you very much for the presentation. Commissioners, the panel is open for questions. Commissioner Ackerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation and for the materials that you submitted. I just am looking for a little clarification on the plan that's being requested for approval here. To my understanding, there's still a significant unanswered question from the federal side as to whether or not they'll allow continuous drilling. And so I was hoping for a little bit more clarification today on the status of that situation, and if you have any indication of what direction they'll go. And then I have some follow-up questions after that. Thanks.
Yes, I'll take that question. So we've been working with BLM, and they know that this is our schedule. They have verbally approved the timing limitation, but again, their process doesn't evaluate that request until closer to the time of activity. They want to evaluate site-specific conditions. So we'll be in communication with them in September probably, and we'll likely submit the timing limitations to them end of September or October. And that is when we'll know for sure whether those exceptions would be granted. But that's their typical process.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And so what you're working from here is an anticipation that those will be granted. And so what you're asking for approval here today is the proposal in the plan that continuous drilling will occur, not necessarily asking for approval of I'm a little unclear whether it's a 4 or 5 occupation plan. Is that correct?
Yeah, we are asking for basically the continuous operations for year-round drilling and completions in coordination with BLM's approval.
Understand. Thank you. And you mentioned today during the presentation that there would otherwise be 5 occupations. I think the materials talk about 4. That might be a moot point because you're not asking for approval of that, but any clarification on that?
Yeah, the timeline that was put into the presentation is the accurate timeline, and it would be 5 occupations of drilling and completion equipment.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Those are the only questions I have, Mr. Chair. Thanks.
Thank you for those questions. Further questions for the panel? All right, seeing no further questions, we move to deliberation phase. Does any commissioner desire to initiate their own deliberations? Commissioner Ackerman?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to initiate deliberations. I appreciate the work that's been done here. There was extensive consultation with CPW. I've also been in contact with them, and a number of issues that they worked through point by point on this proposal. We've heard in the past and discussed in the past whether continuous drilling or whether multiple occupations are appropriate. And we've discussed in the past how really that philosophy can change based on the site. And generally this deep into Winter Range HPH, continuous occupations on the western slope are most often preferred to phased development and delayed reclamation. I've made this point in the past, but I do just want to make sure that the public understands that when we designated high priority habitat under Rule 1202D, we recognize that development can take place with careful planning in those types of habitats. And I wanted to read from the mission change rulemaking on page 202, which reads, the subset of habitats listed in Rule 1202D, while sensitive, are frequently managed by land managers and state wildlife agencies using impact minimization strategies, like co-locating facilities and limiting the density of surface facilities or implementing surface disturbance caps. Evidence in the administrative record demonstrates that when properly regulated, development can occur within these areas in a manner protective of wildlife populations and their habitat. Compensatory mitigation is often utilized to offset unavoidable adverse impacts that occur in these habitats when impact minimization strategies are not successful. That said, there has been careful planning here. There's been significant conversation with both BLM and with CPW. As Ms. Wazelinski pointed out, CPW has acknowledged that they don't have any remaining concerns, although they had a number of points that they discussed with this operator as part of this development plan. That said, I believe careful planning has taken place here to CPW's satisfaction and to my satisfaction. My understanding is that we're asking for approval of the plan that includes continuous drilling, not for approval at this point of a plan that would be a multiple occupation plan. And I wanted to recognize also that the director's recommendation did include a condition of approval. That approval of the variance request was contingent upon the bonding to ECMC in the amount of $240,026, and that interim reclamation would commence no longer than 12 months following the completion of all pre-production activities, or within 6 months of the completion of the last well for a maximum of time frame of 54 months. Just wanted to verify with the I meant to do this during questions, and I apologize with the operator that they're supportive of those conditions of approval as well. That said, Mr. Chair, those are my deliberative thoughts and would move for approval of this application pending further discussion from any other commissioners.
Thank you, Commissioner Ackerman, for the deliberative thoughts and for the motion. For I second the motion, I'm going to look around and see if anybody else has thoughts on this OGDP. Commissioner Messner.
Thanks. No thoughts on the OGDP. I think it's a good OGDP. I guess I have a process question because, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but that condition of approval seems to indicate that it would be necessary only in the instance where there would be multiple occupations versus the proposed single occupation with approval of the BLM for the exception. And so I guess the question is whether or not we need that condition of approval or not, if it is actually being proposed and approved here for a single occupation.
AAG Boudreau, could you visualize?
If I understand the question correctly, you're asking, do we need the condition of approval if they're going to conduct the single occupation, or do we need it if they're going to conduct the 4 or 5 occupations?
Correct, because as Commissioner Ackerman indicated, what's actually being proposed here, my understanding, because we can't, well, it seems odd to approve multiple timelines associated with this. So the timeline that's being approved here is the single occupation with the exception from the BLM. It appears that the COA is only contemplated for the multiple occupations, but I could be confused, and so this is why I'm asking the question.
I understood the 1003B variance request to be associated with the single occupation and continuous drilling. Maybe Ms. Swazilinski can clarify.
Thank you. I'm happy to clarify. The plan as presented is that the BLM would approve the timing limitation exception. However, if they don't, because obviously that has not been formally approved yet, then operations would be extended and QB would need the variance, which would trigger the condition of approval. So I think at this point, the reason why the director recommendation includes the condition of approval is because the timing limitation has not been formally granted yet, and therefore the variance is still being requested with that condition of approval tied to the variance.
So it sounds like Commissioner Messner has it right.
That's the way I read it, and so it seems just a little procedurally awkward to approve a variance and one variance with a different timeline than what's being proposed here, rather than having the application be approved for what is being requested, which is the single occupation. So I guess I'm just asking from a procedural standpoint, is it appropriate to have we're essentially approving 2 different applications in one here if we approve 2 different timelines, because the 2 different timelines are going to have different data requirements for the Form 2B, for the cumulative impacts report, for things like that, versus the single occupation, which is going to have different data points and different information. And so maybe you can help me with that, AAG Boudreau.
That being the case, if you're approving the single occupation and continuous drilling, you do not need the 1003B variance request or the associated condition.
Okay, well, that's my understanding is what Commissioner Ackerman's motion was, and so I'm just confirming that. So maybe Commissioner Ackerman, you can confirm that's what your motion was.
Commissioner Ackerman?
Yes, thank you for the clarification. I appreciate you bringing up that question, Commissioner Messner, and for the clarification from the operator and from AAG Boudreau. I do think that it was included because of kind of a potentially a vague ask for an approval of 2 separate timeframes here, depending on which way the BLM goes. That wasn't my interest and it wasn't my understanding from the discussion. And so I think Commissioner Messner is right here that those COAs would only apply if the BLM comes back with with non-approval of the request here. And at that point, to me, we would need to further discuss this under different timeframes rather than just contingently approving two timeframes. So I would retract the inclusions of those COAs from that motion. And my motion would be to approve this based on the continuous operations drilling timeframe.
Okay, with that clarification, Commissioner Ackerman, is it my understanding that if the federal BLM is not comfortable with that and wants multiple occupations, they need to come back to us so that we could revisit this?
That's my preference, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Other commissioners comfortable with that approach? All right, I would second that motion. Do we have further discussion? Ms. Wazelinski, are you not happy but comfortable with the motion that's on the table?
Chair, I think if timing limitations are somehow not approved, which again, we don't anticipate, the variance would be needed. And so I think we would need to come back to a hearing with you all and seek that, which QB would be prepared to do.
Okay, that's my understanding as well.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Wazelinski. Thanks to staff for the good work here. Wish you all the best, and hopefully we won't need to see you again. All right. With that, I think next on our agenda is an executive session to receive legal advice and analysis regarding enforcement docket 2602000039. AAG Davenport.
Thank you, Chair. We need a motion to go into that executive session. I won't go through my script because you've already read what the topic and purpose of that executive session is. I will only note that pursuant to open meetings law, which is cited within the agenda for today, the commission is authorized to enter into an executive session. And I would ask you, Mr. Chair, to encourage a motion to enter into executive session for the purpose that you stated on the record.
So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Motion and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Okay. For the folks that are listening in, what we're going to do is we're going to go into an executive session. That means that the commission will leave this Zoom meeting and we'll go into a separate Zoom meeting that will contain us and our attorney generals. Once we're done with that executive session, we'll come back to this session, and then we will exit executive session, and then our business will be over for the day. So if you want to stick around to hear that, please do. Otherwise, we'll see you in a bit, maybe 30 minutes or so, but that's a guess. I don't really know how long executive sessions go. Commissioners, with that, I encourage you to leave this session and go to the executive session. All right, welcome back. This is the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. It is March 11th, and we're back in our regular business agenda. AAG Davenport, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry about that, everybody. Thanks, Mr. Chair. The commission is exiting executive session, which was held pursuant to Colorado Open Meetings Law to receive legal advice's analysis regarding enforcement docket number 2602-00039. No votes were taken in that executive session. The commission did not deliberate in that executive session. Commission did not make any decisions in that executive session. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would ask for a motion to exit executive session.
So moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. We're back in open session. Commissioners, our business agenda has been concluded. Therefore, I would move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned. We'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.